on one aspect touched on by the noble Baroness, for whom I'm grateful for this debate, and that is the way the recall system is working. The problem is very simple to state. The test for recall is essentially a low threshold, and the test for release after recall is a high threshold. The result is that the mean time in custody after recall has risen to between 25 and 30 months, the equivalent of a 5-year sentence of imprisonment. Now, the report refers to the result of the thematic inspection published in December of last year and notes that the government accepted each recommendation and published a revised IPP action plan. However, I think the base problem is not highlighted in the recommendations or the report, and the action plan doesn't grapple with it. I want to make 4 points quickly. First, the test for recall requires the person making the decision to demonstrate causal link in the current behaviour to that was exhibited at the time of the index offence. Many of the recalls are because the person on licence has been late to returning to approved accommodation. I met one at Wormwood Scrubs recently. I simply don't understand how we can go on using this recall test for people who have been at least 12 years imprisonment under a sentence of IPP. Surely we need a properly focused test that takes into account the realities of IPP. Can we have that, please? 2, while the test remains, the decision on recall should set out the evidence for the causal link. It should be written, like all good decisions, before the decision is promulgated to ensure the reasoning justifies the recall. That's called good decision-making. Given the extremely serious consequences of recall on the liberty of a subject, this practice of good decision-making should be required. I ask that that be done. Then a review of such decisions is needed before the process, this lengthy process, before the parole board gets fully underway. If the IPP prisoner had been sentenced in a court, then he would have had a right of appeal, and the case heard by the Court of Appeal, if leave was given, in about 5.5 to 6 months. Question: does a senior civil servant review the recall, both for the evidence and its proportionality? After all, the Secretary of State is responsible and accountable, and the knowledge of a review by someone directly accountable to her improves decision-making. Certainly that's the experience of every tribunal, that if you have a review, it works to improve decision-making. And fourthly, if recall is properly evidence-based and proportionate, what can be done to speed up the process of release, given what the thematic report says about the effect on mental health? Has the parole board got enough resources? Now, as to unreleased IPPs, 3 quick points. First, about 16% have tariffs of less than 2 years. That injustice is palpable, as they had the misfortune to be sentenced before the tariff was raised to at least 2 years. As of March 2024, 32 IPPs were sentenced when they're under 18, and they've never been released. And as of June 2024, there were 37 who were over 70 who had never been released. They will have served the equivalent of a 24-year sentence. There can be no doubt that we must look again at the way the Rees test works, and the extent to which the responsibility of the state for this stain on English justice is taken into account. The Howard League has established a panel to look at such issues, and we intend to report before April 2025.